Next generation NCLEX practice questions, ethical and legal issues in nursing. Question 1. The nurse calls the doctor regarding a new medication prescription because the dosage prescribed is higher than the recommended dosage. The nurse is unable to locate the doctor, and the medication is due to be given. Which action would the nurse take? 1. Contact the nursing supervisor to administer the dose prescribed. 3. Hold the medication until the doctor can be contacted for administer the recommended dose. What is the answer? Answer 1. If the doctor writes a prescription that requires clarification, the nurse's responsibility is to contact the doctor. If there is no resolution regarding the prescription, because the doctor cannot be located or the prescription remains as it was written after talking to the doctor, the nurse should contact the nursing supervisor. Under no circumstances would the nurse proceed to carry out the prescription until obtaining clarification. Question 2. The nurse hears a client calling out for help, hurries down the hallway to the client's room, and finds the client lying on the floor. The nurse performs an assessment, assists the client back to bed, notifies the primary health care provider, and completes an occurrence report. Which statement would the nurse document on the occurrence report? 1. The client fell out of bed. 2. The client climbed over the side rails. 3. The client was found lying on the floor. 4. The client became restless and tried to get out of bed. What is the answer? Answer 3. Rationale. The occurrence report needs to contain a factual description of the occurrence, any injuries experienced by those involved, and the outcome of the situation. The correct option is the only one that describes the facts as observed by the nurse. Options 1, 2, and 4 are interpretations of the situation and are not factual information as observed by the nurse. Question 3. A client is brought to the emergency department by emergency medical services after being hit by a car. The name of the client is unknown, and the client has sustained a severe head injury and multiple fractures, and is unconscious. An emergency craniotomy is required. Regarding informed consent for the surgical procedure, which is the best action? 1. Obtain a court order for the surgical procedure. 2. Ask the EMS team to sign the informed consent. 3. Transport the victim to the operating room for surgery. 4. Call the police to identify the client and locate the family. What is the answer? Answer 3. Rationale. In general, there are 2 situations in which informed consent of an adult client is not needed. One is when an emergency is present. The second is when the client waives the right to give informed consent. Option 1 will delay emergency treatment, and option 2 is inappropriate. Although option 4 may be pursued, it is not the best action because it delays necessary emergency treatment. Question 4. The nurse has just assisted a client back to bed after a fall. The nurse and primary health care provider have assessed the client and have determined that the client is not injured. After completing the occurrence report, the nurse would implement which action next? 1. Reassess the client. 2. Conduct a staff meeting to describe the fall. 3. Contact the nursing supervisor to update information regarding the fall. 4. Document in the nurse's notes that an occurrence report was completed. What is the answer? Answer 1. Rationale. The nurse must frequently reassess the client because potential complications do not always appear immediately. The client's fall needs to be private and shared on a need-to-know basis. An occurrence report is a problem-solving document. However, its completion is not documented in the nurse's notes. If the nursing supervisor has been made aware of the occurrence, the supervisor will contact the nurse if status update is necessary. Question 5. The nurse arrives at work and is told to report float to the intensive care unit ICU for the day because the ICU is understaffed and needs additional nurses to care for the clients. The nurse has never worked in the ICU. The nurse would take which best action? 1. Refuse to float to the ICU based on lack of unit orientation. 2. Clarify the ICU client assignment with the team leader to ensure that it is a safe assignment. 3. Ask the nursing supervisor to review the hospital policy on floating. 4. Submit a written protest to nursing administration, and then call the hospital lawyer. What is the answer? Answer 2. Rationale. Floating is an acceptable practice used by hospitals. Legally, the nurse cannot refuse to float. The nurse would set priorities and identify potential areas of harm to the client. That is why clarifying the client assignment with the team leader to ensure that it is a safe one is the best option. Submitting a written protest and calling the hospital lawyer are premature actions. Question 6. The nurse who works on the night shift enters the medication room and finds a coworker with a tourniquet wrapped around the upper arm. The coworker is about to insert a needle, attached to a syringe containing a clear liquid, into the antecubital area. Which is the most appropriate action by the nurse? 1. Call security. 2. Call the police. 3. Call the nursing supervisor. 4. Lock the coworker in the medication room until help is obtained. What is the answer? Answer 3. Rationale. Nurse Practice Acts require the reporting of impaired nurses. The Board of Nursing has jurisdiction over the practice of nursing and may develop plans for treatment and supervision of the impaired nurse. This occurrence needs to be reported to the nursing supervisor, who will then report to the Board of Nursing and other authorities, such as the police, as required. Question 7. A hospitalized client tells the nurse that an instructional directive is being prepared and that the lawyer will be bringing the documents to the hospital today for witness signatures. The client asks the nurse for assistance in obtaining a witness to the will. The nurse plans to make which most appropriate response to the client. 1. I will sign as a witness to your signature. 2. You will need to find a witness on your own. 3. Whoever is available at the time will sign as a witness for you. 4. I will call the nursing supervisor to seek assistance regarding your request. What is the answer? Answer 4. Rationale. Instructional directives living wills are required to be in writing and signed by the client. The client's signature must be witnessed by specified individuals or notarized. Many states prohibit any employee, including the nurse of a facility where the client is receiving care, from being a witness. The nurse would seek the assistance of the nursing supervisor. Question 8. The nurse has made an error in documentation of the dose administered of an opioid pain medication in the client's record. The nurse draws 1 mg from the vial and another registered nurse RN witnesses wasting of the remaining 1 mg. When scanning the medication, the nurse entered into the medication administration record MAR that 2 mg of hydromorphone was administered instead of 1 mg. The nurse would take which action as to correct the error in the MAR. Select all that apply. 1. Complete and file an occurrence report. 2. Right-click on the entry and modify it to reflect the correct information. 3. Document the correct information and end with the nurse's signature and title. 4. Obtain a co-signature from the RN who witnessed the waste of the remaining 1 mg. 5. Document in a nurse's note in the client's record detailing the corrected information. What is the answer? Answer 2, 3, 4, 5. Rationale. In the MAR, the nurse can click on the entry, usually right-click and modify it to reflect the corrected information. Since this is an opioid medication, the nurse would obtain a co-signature from the RN who witnessed the wasting of the excess medication was given. A nurse's note needs to detail the event and the corrections made, and the nurse's name and title will be stamped on the entry in the EHR. Question 9. Which notations indicate accurate nursing documentation by the nurse? Select all that apply. 1. The client slept through the night. 2. Abdominal wound dressing is dry and intact without drainage. 3. The client seemed angry when awakened for measurement of vital signs. 4. The client appears to become anxious when it is time for respiratory treatments. 5. The client's left lower medial leg wound is 3 centimeters in length without redness, drainage, or edema. What is the answer? Answer 1, 2, 5. Rationale. Factual documentation contains descriptive, objective information about what the nurse sees, hears, feels, or smells. The use of inferences without supporting factual data is not acceptable because it can be misunderstood. The use of vague terms such as seemed or appears is not acceptable because these words suggest that the nurse is stating an opinion. Question 10. A nursing instructor delivers a lecture to nursing students regarding the issue of clients' rights and asks a nursing student to identify a situation that represents an example of invasion of client privacy. Which situation, if identified by the student, indicates an understanding of a violation of this client right? 1. Performing a procedure without consent. 2. Threatening to give a client a medication. 3. Telling the client that they cannot leave the hospital. 4. Observing care provided to the client without the client's permission. What is the answer? Answer 4. Rationale. Invasion of privacy occurs with unreasonable intrusion into an individual's private affairs. Performing a procedure without consent is an example of battery. Threatening to give a client a medication constitutes assault. Telling the client that the client cannot leave the hospital constitutes false imprisonment. Question 11. An older client is brought to the emergency department for treatment of a fractured arm. On physical assessment, the nurse notes old and new ecchymotic areas on the client's chest and legs and asks the client how the bruises were sustained. The client, although reluctant, tells the nurse in confidence that a family member frequently hits the client if supper is not prepared on time when the family member arrives home from work. The nurse plans to make which most appropriate response? 1. Oh really? I will discuss this situation with your family member. 2. Let's talk about the ways you can manage your time to prevent this from happening. 3. Do you have any friends who can help you out until you resolve these important issues with your family member? 4. As a nurse, I am legally bound to report abuse. I will stay with you while you give the report and help find a safe place for you to stay. What is the answer? Answer 4. Rationale. The nurse must report situations related to child or elder abuse. Confidential issues are not to be discussed with non-medical personnel or the client's family or friends without the client's permission. Clients need to be assured that information is kept confidential unless it places the nurse under a legal obligation. Question 12. The nurse employed in a hospital is waiting to receive a report from the laboratory via the facsimile fax machine. The fax machine activates and the nurse expects the report, but instead receives a sexually oriented photograph. Which is the most appropriate initial nursing action? 1. Call the police. 2. Cut up the photograph and throw it away. 3. Call the nursing supervisor and report the occurrence. 4. Call the laboratory and ask for the name of the individual who sent the photograph. What is the answer? Answer 3. Rationale. Ensuring a safe workplace is a responsibility of an employing institution. Sexual harassment in the workplace is prohibited by state and federal laws. If the nurse believes that they are being subjected to unwelcome sexual conduct, these concerns need to be reported to the nursing supervisor immediately. How many correct answers did you get? Thank you for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe for more.